Hello, friends. Darren Bailey coming to you today on, we're going to talk about election integrity. I am blessed and honored that I am here with my dear friend David Paul Blumenshine. David and I first met back when we both ran for state representative in the 2017-2018 primary, and David called me up one day wanting to talk. I drove up. We met at Panera, and gosh, David and Tanya and Cindy and I, we've just developed a brotherly bond and a friendship. And I thank you so much for your passion for Illinois and not giving up. And just God bless you and Tanya. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Darren, and it is good to be here. And obviously you, as the viewers, can see that Darren is in red and I am in blue. No, we are both on the red team. Unfortunately, I guess that's what happens when you come in as the guest. You get,
and then I blue shirt,
and then I wore the blue sweater, so I really didn't, set myself apart. But no, thank you, Darren. Obviously, you're right. This journey has been long, and no one would have anticipated. I don't think either one of us would have. Sitting at Panera would have dreamt that we would be where we're at here in the state of Illinois. We knew what the problems were back then. We didn't know how long it would take for us to truly ride the runaway train, the runaway freight train that Illinois government is. But you're right, that part of that is the election integrity process. And who would have thunk that 7 years ago, or 6 years ago, that we would be sitting here looking at the state of Illinois and how elections are handled here in our state. So it's good to be here with you. Obviously, we found out together, myself being part of your team in the campaign to win the governor's office, that that election was basically over before we even started. And a lot of people are probably asking themselves, well, yes, I was aware of that when the announcement was made on election night, November 8th. Was the 8th, right? It seems like it escaped us. But,
Yes.
The polls hadn't even closed.
Right.
And they declared Governor Pritzker the winner. And then when we kind of started walking that thing out and realizing where did we go wrong? And now we realize that yes, the vote by mail was the monster, right? The machine that was built. I guess calling it a monster, but we have 40 days of an election season now, and you don't really even need 40 days. You just need people to sign up for vote by mail, which is their strategy. Those numbers were roughly 845,000 vote by mail ballots, with 66% of them being Dem ballots and a little over 25% being Republican ballots, and then the remaining being independents or people who declare no allegiance on the ballot. So that in of itself, I think, has us all aware of where do we go from here. And so it was good to learn that lesson. Yes, those lessons sometimes sting a little bit, and I think it feels like a gut punch, but we're better for it, because ultimately I think it helped us engage in this process.
Yeah, that's right. David, before we let the people know about your radio station and your upcoming podcast, because I truly consider you the foremost expert. Aside, we've got Carol Davis with Illinois Conservative Union. We've got other people across the state that have really been working hard to reign Illinois. But you've been right there by my side. You've been, as we push this message out across the state. I thank you for your expertise. You have not been shy or bashful about standing up, even in the face of opposition, even amongst our family, the Republican Party, and just saying, hey, this something's not right. So and you're on every week on that. Tell us a little bit about so people can find you.
I have a show on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal, and I always put a tagline, and beyond, because now, as you can see, what we're doing here today, it's modern technology. Your voice can be heard around the world. There is an app with cities929.com. It's on the App Store, but you can also stream us at that location. My show is Sundays from 1 to 3. It's kind of cool because I get to leave church, and usually my pastor is always good about setting my show up. In fact, it's really good now because he has, my pastor at the Tabernacle, Tim Farrell, has a show prior to mine at cities929.com called The Victorious Life. So with modern technology, you can take the DPB show anywhere you go. Darren, thank you for the compliment about the expertise, because you and Tom DeVore and people like yourself, even Chris Miller just recently on a Sunday show, have been part of my guest host, or I should say people that are contributors to the content that we put forth. And as far as Carol Davis, yes, by all means, she is the guru of election integrity. We came alongside Carol and a few others when we started realizing there was this beating of the drum of our elections being expanded because of the coronavirus and how the state decided to go to vote by mail and expanding the voting season and remote voting and all different ways of casting your ballots over a 54-day period. 40 days for casting your ballots, 14 days for adjudication, meaning anything that comes in after Election Day. You and I and Cindy were sitting at a little place in Roanoke, Illinois, where I really felt compelled to say, guys, this was just prior to the primary of 2022. I think we all realized that even though it was contested, that we were the front runners and we were going to win that election. But really, that wasn't what I was concerned about, was the upcoming election. And so we needed to assemble a team. They had done this in Virginia in 2021 with Glenn Youngkin and Winston Sears and the Attorney General candidate at the time who won that election. It escapes me right now as far as the name, but the Virginia model was something that we were trying to duplicate here in Illinois. And we went about doing that over a little lunch. And I know that we were trying to get to a forum that night where all the candidates except for one were going to speak for the first time and together. And so there were a lot of things to talk about, but we just kept pushing into that, saying this is so vitally important that we understand the electoral process and educate people about that and what it means to flip a state from blue to red like they did in Virginia. In their case, they had 4,500 poll watchers. We, at the end of our little 2022 race, ended up with about 3,000, which was 1,500 short, which unfortunately for the state, the size of our state, was not enough. However, we're just getting started. And that's the beautiful thing about it is election integrity is going to be with us for a long time, because obviously we have a difference of opinions on how elections should be run.
So one thing that I hear constantly, my vote doesn't count because of Chicago. It's rigged. How do we, I think those two comments and voter turnout, proves that. I think it's important for people to realize that of eligible voters, only 70% are registered.
Yeah.
And then so when we talk about voter turnout, we're only talking about that 70%. So we had about a 48% turnout in this recent general midterm election. And recently in Chicago, we saw that there was a 32% turnout. And that alarms me and and astounds me, because we're hearing too much about people wanting, they want something different. And that coupled with the fact that then the other aspect of that is early voting, capturing that vote. I want to tell you a quick story. I was at a local store, a grocery store here just a few days ago, and I had a lady come up to me and just express her sorrow. Man, I'm sorry you didn't win. I wished you would have won. And now many people will add in there, I voted for you, and I didn't hear that from her. And she was concerned, and I shared with her, the low voter turnout and the fact that we pretty well had it pegged and believed that statistically, if 60% of registered voters would have shown up and voted, that we would have carried this and we could have won. And she immediately followed that up with, well, I had a reason I couldn't vote. I was sick that day. And I've heard this a lot, even after the primary. People who had to be out of state or out of the area, or their work lasted longer than anticipated, and that is the importance of of voting early. So yeah, I wouldn't mind just kind of opening the floor to you to talk about those aspects as to dispel these problems with early voting, and to help people understand why it is so vitally important that yes, we've got to show up and exercise this constitutional, God-given right and duty to vote.
Hmm. Well, first and foremost, and you hit upon so many critical issues there, every vote counts. It is county-wide. That's how our elections are run. Some good county clerks, some not so good county clerks, right? You have the ability to elect your county clerk. You have the ability to be a part of that process, whether that's as an election judge or a poll watcher through the election season. Once again, where I don't necessarily agree with the election season, there is really no excuse anymore for anyone not to take part in the process of the electoral day or the electoral season. It's 40 days. So you can do it now by mail. They have drop boxes. Once again, I'm not big on the drop boxes. However, they're not going away. So when you say, well, that's the part that I'm talking about, my vote doesn't count. Well, no. If you want your vote to really count, get a vote by mail ballot, sign up for one. Because you don't know what's going to happen in your life, right? Life happens. Get a vote by mail ballot, review it, look at it, research the candidates that are on there, their positions, who they are. And when you feel comfortable, you can either fill that out, or during the early voting season, which is the only way you would have a vote by mail ballot is during the early voting season, hand deliver that and have them mark it as spoiled and cast your ballot at one of their tabulating machines. Now, I know a lot of people would quickly, their ears perked up about machines because they've heard so much out there about the machines. You have an opportunity in that process. They have, granted, I get it. There's a lot of stuff out there, and it's confusing at times, and it's high-end software issues and things like that. It is not something that's going to affect, I think, most counties throughout the United States of America, especially here in Illinois. We're not Cook County where I live. And most people that are probably listening to this, you're not Cook County. And if you are Cook County, then you need to ramp it up and become part of that. And I know there are many stories about what transpired in the general election of last year with as many vote by mail ballots as they were processing. And not all of them were handled in a manner that is consistent with election code. These are folks that were hired to do a job, and they weren't. They were sworn in or deputized as election judges and things like that, but they were just merely processing ballots. So, yes, Darren, you're right that people say that I don't have confidence, but for most of us, you have an option, and that option is to secure your ballot, secure your name, know if you're in possession of your ballot, then you control that ballot. You can either deliver it to your election authority and have filled it out ahead of time. I'm not encouraging anybody, nor would I ever encourage anybody to utilize the USPS. And not that I take anything away from those mail carriers, but once we start the chain of custody, the only person I want handling my ballot is me. And I want to see it tabulated. And yes, I think that you can go through that process and like I said, walk through it once. If you're somebody that doesn't believe your vote counts, at least walk through the process once. Get involved, understand what you're saying no to if you believe your vote doesn't count. So I know that probably didn't do great service to that.
No, that was good.
We're at 14 minutes and 45 seconds is what I was going to say. So I had to look over there at the clock.
Well, just address real quick. Somebody comes up to you and says the elections are stolen.
Yeah.
Many times when people come up to me and they stole it, actually we gave it away, because we didn't show up, we didn't get our vote in.
Yeah.
But how you're on ground zero. People say, well, you conceded way too early. You should have hung in there. You should have fought. Yeah. And then I explain to people, well, we're talking. If we're going to challenge, we have to have real proof. Yeah. We just saw what took place. 2 years later, it's supposedly the same thing in Arizona, and still we're where we're at. How do you give our listeners something to, for conversation pieces to the people that they're talking to when they hear this to begin to build the confidence that we need. The election was stolen.
Yeah. So first and foremost, the election process, you're right. Based on an expanded election season, there's more opportunity to mishandle ballots. For the most part, that's our responsibility to keep our county clerks in charge. They're in charge. They are the election authority, or in some counties they have a separate election authority. Like in my county, McLean, we have not only the county clerk, but we also have the Bloomington Election Commission. It has been that way for almost 100 years. So there's 2 election authorities. In the state of Illinois, we have 108 election authorities. So 102 counties, 108 election authorities. I think Rockford, Chicago, Bloomington, and somebody I'm sure is filling in the blanks for me already. I escaped, but once again, find out who that election authority is. You need to hold them accountable. As far as the process of what you had mentioned, if people don't show up, if you concede and say, my vote doesn't count, or I shouldn't go and vote because it really won't amount to anything, that's really not true, especially when you gave the percentages of who shows up for a consolidated election. Right now, it is election season, 2023. Started on February 23rd. Well, actually, it started before that, because in Chicago, as we just found out, their election, they had a primary to overcome the amount of candidates that they had that filed for the mayoral race in Chicago, and that was decided day before yesterday, the end of the month. So now those 2 candidates that were able to accumulate the most votes will go into the April 4th election. But, when you said 32%, right, voter turnout in the city of Chicago, most consolidated elections, a high number is about 18%, Darren.
Yeah.
And so that's electing your school boards, your city councils, your village boards, your city council, village board, towns. I guess there are a couple of towns in Illinois, Normal being one of them where I live, and Cicero being the other one, the original towns. But so those elections, usually if you follow them, they can be 7 votes. We had a mayoral race in 2017 that was decided by 7 votes in the town of Normal. 7 votes. And so that means if 8 more people showed up and voted for my friend at the time, Mark Tiratilli, he would have won that election by 1 vote. So many positions have been decided. We have a mutual friend in Jim Root, right, in Macon County. Yeah. And his sheriff's race, he was not declared the winner. But under protest and through a court case, lo and behold, they ended up finding a couple ballots. He ended up winning by 1. Now, this was 3 years into the sheriff's term, so then he was put in and seated as the sheriff, and now he just recently ran again and won that election handily as the sheriff. But there's a perfect example. Votes do count, especially in these local elections, but ultimately you can never overcome low voter turnout. And that's what we found out. I mean, when they say all these ballots that came through, why did you concede so early? Well, statistically, the night started out without counting any votes, with J.B. Pritzker holding a margin of about 42 points. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. Elections, everybody knows, 10 points is bad to be behind, because that's almost not something you can overcome. But when you're 40 points before the night even starts because of these early voting ballots that came in, which means we don't have to like it, but we have to play the game that's out there. And I think that's what we got to do, is train our people. And I know we're going to talk more at length about that, at the countywide basis and within our local party system. How do we get involved, and how do we help get people to show up, to participate in this God-given right of ours to vote?
Yep. Well, thank you very much for that. And that's what, as we would be up in the northern suburbs, and I would spend, a couple days a week just stopping by some of the the wonderful friends that were just the boots on the ground, knocking on doors. We good little Republicans had our walk cards in our pockets and knocking on doors and asking people, hey, I'm Darren Bailey, and here's can't someone running for Congress or state representative with me? And we'd sure, had you heard of us, and we'd sure appreciate your vote. And meanwhile, J.B. Pritzker had just teams, I think it's believed he spent over $30 million sending people out. And these people had backpacks on and were carrying luggage, and they had computers. They were registering people at the door. They were collecting, having people were signing up for early voting. They were doing the work. And that is for Republicans are going to, if we're going to win elections, or we're going to have to participate in it. If early voting and mail-in voting, and if it all, if you despise that, we've got to win in order to change it and make it right. So,
and that requires that people show up, and that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, and I know we're up against the end of this episode because I don't want to keep people too long because we've got a lot of content that we want to get to today. My friend, Stan Nord, who's a city council person in the town of Normal, said it best about 2 weeks ago. The Democrats run their party like a business. Republicans run their party like a garage sale they hold twice a year.
That's powerful.
And it is. It's a garage sale. We always seem to be chasing, and we never truly come together strategically of having a forward-looking growth plan of how we get from here to there. Where the Dems, and you're right, money is flowing in, right? Corporate money comes in, union money comes in. Our governor's a billionaire. We had people calling us on the campaign trail 2 days before the election asking how much we pay for them to show up at the polling place.
Right.
So we know that when our answer wasn't more money than what the governor was paying or the Democrat Party was paying, we knew we were already being outspent. But you're right, they approach it systematically, and they do knock the doors, and they do show up, and they do supply the information that's needed or the ballot that is needed. They get people signed up with ballots, and they do collect ballots. They call it ballot harvesting. I like to refer to it as ballot chasing because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to chase these ballots and make sure that people do show up for a voter turnout. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I believe in the state of Illinois, I believe the state of Illinois has always been a red state. We just have been outworked, and they've got a better business plan than we do at this point. But I do believe that that's going to change. There are many people involved in the process of getting that turned around.
Well, I love that vision, and I agree with you 100%. And Cindy and I know you and Tanya, we've all pretty well committed ourselves that we're not giving up. We're not going anywhere. We're going to continue to fight for Illinois. So, friends, I just thank you so much for tuning in to this early podcast. And David, Paul, thank you so much for coming down here and being a part of this. The whole purpose of this is to be able to catalog conversations so that whenever you have a friend that is frustrated with the election process and that you can pull this and just kind of catch yourself up some new refreshed ideas and because we've got to start winning. We've got to take back Illinois. We've got to take back our nation. We've got to take back our schools, our counties, our communities because I just truly believe the Republican Party, if we stick to our platform, has the answers, all the answers. We just need men and women to stand on that platform and to fight for that. So thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you. And we're going to be posting these podcasts out about a week apart. So look forward to seeing you next week. God bless.